Would you like some help trying to figure out what a cap rate is and how that could apply to you as a buyer or a seller in commercial real estate? So a cap rate is an easy formula that a buyer will use to determine what a property is generating for net operating income and what it's basically earning for them with the cash that they're going to put into the property. So it's an easy formula that we use to measure how a property is producing and how much income it's producing. And we don't even factor in initially any loans, or we just look at it from a perspective of paying all cash. And the reason that we do that is so that way, as a buyer, you can compare properties side by side and know how they're going to operate and perform using a cap rate. And maybe you would take a loan for 50% loan to value, but somebody else may take a higher loan and only put 30% down, and the third person may just buy all cash. So to give you a good rule of thumb, using a cap rate, that allows you to really measure the performance of the property. So I'm going to just skim through quickly how we calculate a cap rate. A cap rate is the net operating income divided by the sales price or the purchase price or the list price. Now, let's say nobody has given you a number yet, but you know what the property will generate for net operating income, and you know what the market cap rate is. Then you could use the market cap rate to calculate what you should pay for the property. Now, cap rates are a little tricky in the fact that they're not normally published anywhere where the average person could easily find them. Yeah, you could probably Google them, but you really need to talk to a commercial real estate broker, a CCIM, someone that is knowledgeable in your market that can tell you what property is worth and what the cap rates are going for in that market. So a cap rate is just a measure in time. It happens to be at that time in that time period that you're weighing that property and looking at the net operating income in relation to the sales price or the list price, and you're trying to weigh it out and say, is this a good price? Should I pay this for the property? Now, a higher cap rate is typically going to mean that there's more risk with it. When it's a low cap rate, that shows that it's a stable asset in a good market. So as an example, right now in the Eugene, Springfield, Oregon area, multifamily apartments are selling around 5 to 6% for a cap rate. 5.5% is a pretty good cap rate to use when you're trying to decide what you should offer for a property or what someone should sell a property for. Now, a higher cap rate is going to demonstrate that there's probably more risk to that property. So an example would be an old warehouse, an old industrial building, maybe it's vacant. That's risky because as an investor, unless you're going to move your manufacturing business in there and clean it up and start operating, you're going to buy a vacant building. You're going to have to find a tenant that will move in and pay you rent. And often banks do not want to loan on those type of properties unless you have lots of experience, especially with unique things like I have a client right now that's buying a commercial building and he's going to put a smoke shop in there or a cigarette place, laundromats, gas stations, anything that's a really unique type of commercial use. If you want to obtain a loan, the lender wants to see that you have some operating history. So if you don't have any experience operating those types of assets, you may be better off focused on buying an apartment complex or a multifamily property, or a triple net property where it's like a Jack in the Box, a Taco Bell, a Dollar General, something where there's a national tenant in the building that is paying the owner of the property a monthly check. Now, that's called a triple net property. And in that situation, the bank is much more comfortable because that's typically like a national franchise and it's corporately guaranteed. And the bank can be pretty assured that you're going to receive your rent payment, and that would give you the money to make the debt payment if you were taking debt. I don't want to segue too far off down a rabbit hole related to debt because cap rate does not factor in any debt. And again, the reason that we do that is because we want to use a measurement or a tool that you can look at and measure across the board the property and what income it will generate. Let's talk about cap rate and how to calculate cap rate. So let's say you know a property is $1 million and you're using 5% for a cap rate because that's what the market is in your area. Then you take the $1 million times the 5%, and that will help you figure out what the net operating income is. So in that situation, it's $50,000. Let's say it's a 5.5 cap. So again, we know the property is $1 million times 5.5%. So that means that the property is generating $55,000 in net operating income. Now, often what we know is we'll know what the net operating income is because we'll have a rent roll or we'll see the net operating income in a marketing package. But what we want to do is we want to look at the cap rate and see if they've priced it right. So in doing that, what we do is we look at the net operating income and we divide it by the cap rate, and that tells us what the value or the list price should be. So in this situation, let's say it's $50,000 and we divide that by 5%, that tells us it's $1 million. And if it's $55,000 in income divided by 0.55, then that tells us that it's also $1 million based off of that 5.5% cap rate. I hope that helps. Let me know if you have any questions. If you'd like a free report on your market and what's happening, it's not just the cap rate, but a cap rate is a really easy formula to start the process and determine what a property should be worth. Have a great day.